Good morning. Welcome to the Level Set. I'm Attorney Larry Fields, and I'm joined by Dr. Charles Alexander, the Dr. Charles Alexander from Chicago, Illinois. Uh, and we want to talk about a few topics this morning that we think that are always in play. Number one, to each and every one of the mothers listening, happy Mother's Day weekend. Every day around here is Mother's Day. as is, um, as is happy. And we're being joined also this morning by Attorney Gerald Christmas out of St. Louis, Missouri, who's had an eventful week as well. But we are celebrating Mother's Day weekend, but it's always Mother's Day around here, as well as Father's Day. And every day is mental health day around here. So we want to talk about merge those issues and a few others this morning as we navigate this thing we call life. So with no further ado, Dr. Alexander, want to begin this morning with the impact that mothers have, as well as helping us. We spoke earlier this morning about uh, individuals that are 25 years old. The conversation that you brought up with respect to the tragedies and traumas that they've had to deal with, and we've had to parent through. Gerald is joining us this morning prior to attending a service at he has a morning tea that has been named in his mother's honor at Central Baptist Church in St. Louis, Missouri, which is a scholarship fundraiser. And he so graciously joined us this morning. We'd like to talk about that a little bit as well. So, Dr. Alexander, I want to open the floor up at this point.
So we have a couple of ways that we could go on this. We start. Let's just kind of start with Mother's Day. Um, so Mother's Day established in the early 1900s, and actually, I believe it was a woman in Philadelphia, I believe it was, that established it. Kind of, and she was she wanted to honor the I suppose the memory of her mother, and so she started this in memorial to her mother, and um, like 1907 or something like that, and then I think in 1915 it became a national holiday, and I think the piece about uh, in memoriam is very important because um, you have it, you know. So like myself, my mom is no longer with us. My mom passed in '09, and so like you wonder like what people do or think and say, when their mother is gone on Mother's Day, but and like so many people uh, feel like the day, it doesn't matter anymore because their mother is gone. When in reality, that's exactly why it was established. It was established to, the person who established it. She established to honor the memory of her mom. And so I actually find myself in my work having similar kind of conversations where, this week has been very rough for folks leading up to Mother's Day. So, just the dread and anxiety that some folks have, because they're experiencing Mother's Day without their mom. And one thing that I've started to share with my clients is, once I get an ideal about how they may have shared or what they may have done to celebrate Mother's Day when their mom was present, um, once I get an idea of what that is, I then offer to them that, perhaps the passing um, offers an opportunity to create new traditions. Maybe there's new ways that you honor the memory, uh, and there's new ways to celebrate Mother's Day, and one of those is to honor the memory of your mother as opposed to dread the loss. And so, um, you get varying degrees. Some people still aren't ready necessarily to hear that. But the longer they stay my client, the longer, the more time they get to hear those types of things. Because sometimes, they're not ready on the first time you say stuff like that. They think it's kind of minimizing their feelings. But, we kind of stick with it. And, over time, they start to, they may never look at it exactly like I, offer it, but they might loosen, kind of their take and start to see that there's a range of ways that we can celebrate. And, we certainly want to celebrate with our moms, you know, but again, in essence, the holiday is about, it started in memoriam to the, to the person's mom. You, you muted.
That is incredible insight into that. And I was thinking the memoriam aspect of it and how, yeah, the Bible it really kind of puts that into perspective. It states, how in the world can a tree grow before before the shell dies in the ground? Meaning that, things occur that bigger when there is a death. So when you talk about Mother's Day, and it being in memoriam, it has a bigger impact now and it was founded on that. And I find that very interesting. Attorney Christmas, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. First of all, I think it's important that we mention our mother's names, unless that is something that you're against. I would certainly love need to identify these brilliant ladies by proper names. Dr. Alexander.
Mrs. Barbara Eve Parks Alexander.
Elizabeth Crawford Hewlett Fields was the first Titan in my life.
And Martha Jamar Christmas was the first Titan in mine also.
So Gerald, please respond on that.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with everything that Dr. Alexander said. I think, when you lose your mother like I did in the physical, because I feel like I lost her in the physical, but not in the spiritual, because I still feel like she's always with me in the spiritual. And she makes her presence known from time to time. I can feel it. I can know when my mother's making her presence on me. Sometimes when I'm having issues, she will come to me in dreams to help me resolve those issues. One of the things that happened by accident before my mother passed, my mother had cancer. So she lost a lot of her hair, and I just happened to have some of that hair. And I still have that hair. And I think there's energy in hair. And I keep that hair in a container in my room. And, it's really the only thing like actual physical that I still have of my mother. And sometimes, when I'm struggling or even when I'm feeling good, sometimes, if I'm on my way, like I might be on my way to trial, I grab that hair and touch that hair, and I will actually feel some energy in that hair. And like Dr. Alexander said, I did go through a grieving period when my mother first passed. Like I couldn't even look at a picture of her because I look at a picture of my mother, I break down. So for a minute, you do go through that grieving period, but I'm long past that now. and able to celebrate and have all these good memories, not only of my mother, but of my grandmother, my great aunts, all of these women that, you know, have been a part of my life. I think about them on Mother's Day. So, you know, you just have to internally get yourself to that position, but only you can get yourself to. Well, therapy can help you. I won't say it won't. It will definitely help you get yourself to that position. And then, you know, I still have I have my wife who's a mother, you know, I have 4 daughters, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, you know, so I'm still surrounded by a multitude of mothers. And so it's still a joyous day.
Indeed.
Very joyous day. Yeah, my mother's, I've never been in the absence of my mother's presence in my life. Her presence is, you know, her presence is here. And not just her, but every woman uh, that is part of the lineage. I mean,
Exactly.
almost like we're a cap class of eternity. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
since the beginning of time, we've been getting to this spot, and each individual, and these are folks that have stacked up to get us here. So, you know, this notion of I got a new car and I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams is short-sighted because they're, you know, those are sacrifices that they made were for way more than 40 acres and a mule. And, you know, that presence and that just that level of sacrifice that was made, you know, I mean, it is something that is with me every second of the day. And I am such that, I mean, even when I dream about my parents and I try and wake up and act as if her absence has been a nightmare. And that the
Mm.
dream, you know, that the dream has been that that she's passed along. And my mom died in 2010. But, you know, we've had a geneticist, a worldwide geneticist on the show, Dr. J. She has a PhD from Vanderbilt. I think she was the first Black female to ever receive a PhD in genetics from Vanderbilt. Uh, and she stated that in our DNA, we have, you know, we're a combination of the chromosomes from, you know, half from our father, half from our mother. But with every mother, there's a sub notebook. So you got a notebook from your father, notebook from your mother, but then there's a sub notebook that you get from your mother that you do not get from your father. So this thing was set up for us to have the sort of relationships and the admiration genetically and epigenetically that we have with our mothers. And it shows. I tried to get brunch reservations for my wife, who's a mother of our 3 daughters and 1 boy. And you know, the little club, man, they sold out a month in advance. Father's Day, you're gonna be able to walk up and get it. You'll be you'll be able to
I
walk
know it is.
You'll be able to you'll be able to finish 18 holes, walk up and sit on the veranda. But
You
that
know, we did a family picnic a couple of years ago, and we did it kind of last minute. I'm talking about with the entire family, you know, across the nation. And I suggested, I said, let's do it Father's Day weekend. I said, I don't know if anybody gonna have any conflict. And you know, I polled the family all across the nation. Nobody had a conflict Father's Day weekend. It was wide open. I said, look at this.
that's listen, listen. The class of '84 is having their reunion this year from U City. And,
Uh-huh.
and you know the weekend they picked to have it on because nobody had the
Father's Day.
Father's Day weekend.
Right.
And the fathers are upset that you know they're gonna have, and you know they have the most casual event on Father's Day, so they'll be in the in the park barbecuing on Father's Day. But
It's always wide
oh,
open on Father's Day.
oh man,
And you know it's funny, it's you know, that'll be a whole nother subject for a show. But you know, you have to really tiptoe around Father's Day not the same way you have to around Mother's Day, because that could really, Dr. Alexander, I know you probably know that could really set some people off on Father's Day. You have to be careful about Father's Day.
Mm-hmm. And you know, to your point, Joe, it is it's really kind of interesting. I think I believe that a lot of that is a cultural artifact, in that I know that there are people. I know there are people who are actively parenting, like you know, so brothers. I know that I know brothers who are actively parenting, and I know brothers who were actively parented by their fathers,
Mhm.
who say things like, um, you know, when my son has a game, I don't I don't usually sit with his mother and, you know, because I don't want everybody to know that he has a father, because some of the, you know, some of the kids think you soft if you got a father. And so we have grown black men kind of caught up in, you know, in this stereotype, right? Um, because when you look at, you know, there's data on this. There is data. There's research. The most active parent, the most active uh,
Fathers.
fathering, the most active fathering occurs among black men.
That's right.
Yeah,
The Pew Foundation did
Mhm.
a
yeah,
longitudinal study on that and found that.
yeah. And but you know, we get we get caught up in these things, and so um, you know, and I also know I know guys who, again, father was present in their lives. Um, I, I had a brother. His wife told me, after he, you know, told everybody that, you know, that his father was, you know, this, that, or the other. He was never available, and da 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 da. You know, in a sidebar conversation, sister was like, "You know, he lying, right?" And it was just like, who does that? Like, who does that? You know, and so we it's that level of pressure in the culture that is, you know, that is anti-black. And then even between us, we get into these skirmishes about, is it harder on the black man or is it harder on the black woman? Well, it's hard on both of us. And it's
Exactly.
doubly hard when, you know, we go at each other and we say, you know, we contribute to to uh to the stereotypes. And so um you know, in therapy, you know, I get kind of a range of things. You know, sometimes I have, you know, certainly have folks who have a strain, you know, who have strained relationships with their fathers, and but I have people who have strange, you know, strained relationships with their mothers too. You know, and so um, you know, it's just it's really an interesting dynamic, but um, and it is also, you know, some people want to do what they can do to strengthen their relationships, and you know, others say that they don't want no relationship with them. But man, when I tell you that once you tell me you don't want that relationship, I'm good. But if we continue to have that conversation, it's because the client continues to bring them up, and so that always gives
What I
me
have
that. Always,
noticed though, Dr. Alexander, have you noticed this or not? I have noticed that people that have strained relationships with their mother though seem to be a little off.
I mean, I've seen it kind of both, and
Really?
yep, but I do think it matters why. Like the reason. So it's not just it's probably not just because it's a strained relationship. It's probably like why it's a strained. As to what kind of makes a person off or not. But um, like it. But what I found is that in more cases than not, even when that strained relationship exists, either whether it's mom or dad, that you know it's more so the ambivalence that keeps it strained as opposed to the fact that the person doesn't want it at all. And what they're ambivalent about is being disappointed again or being hurt again, so whatever it is that caused it. And so they long for the relationship, but they don't trust it. Right. And so that's one of the things that occurs. And that's why, like, if it's somebody that I'm in therapy with, that thing can come up over and over and over again. And like I got one gentleman, I laugh at him all the time. I was like, man, it sure seems like you be missing your dad. And he'd be like, come on, Doc, quit playing. I'd be like, you told me you don't want to talk about it, but every time you come in here, you find reasons to talk about it. And so, so he's gonna end up, doing some work. And but it's an interesting thing. And but I think we have to look at these relationships, in the context of the broader thing. And particularly, folks our age and folks a little older than us, whose fathers, literally grew up in Jim Crow. Our parents grew up in Jim Crow. We don't always, and particularly for dads, we don't always contemplate what it was like for him once he left the house. All that time he was gone from the house, doing whatever he was doing on behalf of the family. And then when he come home, what is that like for him? And then he come home, he's tired from work. They've been, wherever he is, he's either been called or treated like a nigger all that time. And so if he comes home and he happens to be emotionally drained and fatigued and may not want to immediately engage, it's very easy for that to be misconstrued by a child.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That
Or if he's stressed when he get off and feel like he got to go have a drink.
Or if any of that. Any of that.
medication.
And you don't understand that as a child.
You don't understand that.
You just
Right.
thinking, he always coming in here full.
Yep.
And we don't, and we're not good at articulating those things.
Right.
As men,
That's a real good point.
Yeah, we're not very good at that. And, there is, first of all, we're the only race that I have ever known about that was paid to separate. Anytime you say that, the house's WIC aid is incumbent upon there not being a man in the house, you are providing financial incentive for us to break up. I have never read that in the history of mankind being the case. If you all know of examples, I'd love to hear them. Because this is supposed to be pedagogical and I want to learn about that. In addition to that, we have got to keep in mind just how strong Black relationships have been throughout time. Theoretically, in slavery, if you decided to pair off with someone that was on the plantation with you, and that was a female, you could be awoken in the middle of the night and your wife be summoned to the master's house to engage in sex acts with the master and his guest, then have to come back and get in bed with you and look at you as a man and try and respect you.
Mm-hmm.
That is unprecedented. The Arabs didn't do that to the Berbers or anybody they conquered. So, the dynamics of our relationships are underestimated, in my opinion. First,
and that's the part we don't talk about enough.
Well, let's just what the Arabs did was they came and took a bunch of women and teenage girls and little girls. That's what they did.
Like Bodo
That's,
Ram. Yeah, they did that.
and
And
they castrated the boys.
and they
So
castrated.
we're not about to get them no pass. And
No,
so
I'm not giving them, no, I'm not giving them a pass. But even as diabolical, I mean, I mean,
it don't get much worse than that.
marginal suffering is. I'm not going to.
Castration is pretty bad.
No, both, both of them. The Arabs did, and the Portuguese, they all did that, and created and created docile races for the most part and killed everyone that was ever a threat. We know that, but the extreme amount, of understanding that you had to have, even in our community, that still resonates in present day, man. I just don't think that can be highlighted enough.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I give you, like a prime example of that piece is, the, the statement, so the other long-standing stereotype is, who protects the Black woman. Well, that comes straight from that space that you're talking about there. And so, this thought that the Black man stands idly by while, whoever comes in and out the community and does whatever and blah, 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 whether it be to the kids or whether it be to the women, that narrative exists, free of things like 1919. Right.
And that's a very, very important point. And let's expand on that. Let's expand on that. Because we certainly need to have balance on that. So go ahead and let's talk about 1919 a little bit, Doc.
And so, in the midst of Red Summer, which literally lasts from like this time, like literally, I think like the first, what's today? The 11th? I think maybe the first, well, first of all, they call them race riots. They weren't race riots. They were actually pogroms. We were getting attacked by, it's really state sanctioned violence in all of these situations. And so
that continues to this day.
And so pretty sure I have to check, but I think like the first event occurred, I think May 10th. And so these went on from May 10th all the way until the last one was in October. And so, it's just a series of attacks by the white majority, and even when it was a white minority in the space, the white folks from neighboring, locales would come, so that it still ended up ultimately being a majority and overwhelmingly, large sums of white folks coming into these communities and literally attacking the folks. But one of the things that you had one of the things that you had by 1919 was, militarily trained, veterans having come home from World War I, who, would unite and fight and protect their neighborhoods. But again, you wasn't just up against anybody. You were up against the state. They were up against, the local paramilitary, police. They were up against the state paramilitary, police. And so, and that's really how we have to look at these things. These are paramilitary forces, and they've always been. And that's even one of the things that we actually, I don't even think we distort this. I think we kind of misunderstand this. Like, we think that this armament that we see of the police now is some new phenomenon. This has always been. And in Tulsa, They were dropping bombs from airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they had Gatling guns. You know, that so these are the things that confront us. And so, but we have these narratives in spite of that, that you know that the black man has been absent and docile. And you know, if we also put into context that you know lynching happened, you know, that it actually occurred, that you know maybe some of them fathers who left and never came back, just maybe, some of those people who left and never came back, though that left and was never heard from again, just maybe they either ended up lynched or they ended up a part of convict leasing, because these are things that have been going on, right? And so you have years and years and years and years and years of this stuff, and people just saying it. You know, those things become, you know, the lie can become the truth. You know,
Especially when you
and
don't have people studying history.
when you don't have people studying it, correct? And which, Gerald, and that's another great point, is because you know one of the things that that at one at the same time, like we just don't even realize how confused we can be on some of this stuff. Like we could say that we ain't got to a point where it get to be that being dumb was cool. You know, we used to always, you know, we say that, right? Kids graduate from high school and college at rates we ain't never seen before. And it ain't just because of pure numbers, the percentages, right? But we say that kind of stuff, and what they ain't teaching our kids nothing. First of all, everybody didn't go to college, and we need to stop lying about that, right? Everybody couldn't go to college, and college is an option. It ain't necessarily the option, right? Less than 30% of Black folks 25 and older have a college degree, right? And so, and that number is only going to increase as the folks who didn't have access to college, you know, our older generation, as those people pass away. And so, but when you look at things like, you know, the open enrollment movement, which was in the latter 60s, early 70s, that gave mass access to predominantly white campuses that Black folks didn't have. For like, you take city colleges, the City University of New York. In the 60s, I think the main campus was in Harlem. They had like 10,000 students on that campus in Harlem. 10,000 students. Only 100 of those students were Black. Right? And so we have this belief that we were always going to school. We have this belief that we were always being taught whatever we needed to be taught. And that's just not true. Because if it was, we wouldn't have had an open enrollment fight. We wouldn't have had a Black Studies movement. You know, and then even when folks talk about the Black Studies movement, you know, well, but if you went to da 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 da, Tuskegee fought for Black Studies, Howard fought for Black Studies, Morehouse fought for Black Studies. So the fact that you went to a HBCU didn't mean you had Black Studies. But again, we don't know these types of things. And these are the things that kind of impact how, you know, how we interpret and how we experience what it is, you know, that we're living, you know, and how we interpret and how we interpret things that we believe occurred in the past. And so all of these things, they kind of play a role in you know, who we come to be ultimately. And so, you know, but you see, like, even, you know, as we started the conversation, like when we don't know, it just necessarily limits. And so if you don't know, that Mother's Day was established in memoriam, then you feel like you can't have Mother's Day no more because your mom passed away. When in reality, that's exactly why the holiday is here.
Mhm.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. And we certainly have it's a nonlinear background on how we got here.
All of
And
these things, right?
yeah, and it is there are no easy fixes here, and there is what the right answer is today may not be the right answer tomorrow. So, and we've got to contemplate all of these things. Let's talk about if we can, for a minute, the foundational psychological impact that the relationship that a mother establishes with a child, and from a practical and a psychological standpoint, how important is that relationship? And in addition to that, following, after we deal with that, I want to go into some practical things that those of us that may still be mourning the loss of our mother may do as we celebrate this Mother's Day weekend.
Like, so fundamentally, this kind of goes, to what Gerald was alluding to earlier. Like, if what's at risk when that estrangement is mom. And so it really kind of depends on when it, like I said, when it occurred, why it occurred, how it occurred. So so you know that the bond is everything, right? You literally had a symbiotic relationship with your mom,
Right.
right? So she
That's
right,
that's
and
the
so
baseline definition of.
that's baseline, right? And so um but from those 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 minutes, those seconds, those moments, those hours, those days, those weeks, months, and years of early development are so critical. And so, again, there's a lot of different things that can occur. Um, but what is happening in that period, what is supposed to happen in that period is attachment. So everything kind of starts with that. It starts with attachment. And um, and so loosely, you have these things. You have things you say firm or secure attachment, and you got anxious attachment, and then I guess worst case scenario is you know no attachment. And so firm attachment, secure attachment is just that. Is that you know you know mom is there, she's responsive, she's nurturing, right? She's consistent, right?
And that relates in the little boy that runs after the mother's car after she drops him off at childcare.
Um,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not trying to get therapy
no,
myself.
no, no. I was gonna say no. I'm gonna say that one might be more the anxiety.
That's the
That
anxiety.
one might be more the anxious attachment, and that. So like that secure kid. One of the things that secure kid has is called object constancy. That means that when mom leaves the room, she's coming back. He's learned that she's coming back, right? And so he don't have a fit when she leaves the room because she's coming back, right? So that insecure kid, that coming back, he hasn't, learned that to be, I can't count on that, right? He's
So
having trouble trying to reconcile that. Now, keep in
so
mind,
so if a child's mother is sick at some point and she has to, she goes into a hospital stay during this time period, and the child becomes confused about that, and that creates that level of anxiety.
yes, sir. And so again, that's how all these other factors come into play, right? And it's like, maybe she was ill, right? Maybe that can impact that, right? maybe the attachment was great, but she got to go back to work. That can impact that. These types of things can impact that. But definitely kind of that kid that can't tolerate, their parent leaving the room. That's probably more in that insecure attachment space. And then you got them where the attachment was it did not form for whatever reason. And again, they are numerous. Now, one of the things that we are vulnerable to is postpartum depression, and we're also, and part of the reason why we're vulnerable to postpartum depression is because we have depression, even prior to the pregnancy, and then during the prenatal term, and so then we're then vulnerable then. And so that person, that sister, she may not be able to bond with the child, right, because of her mental state, her mental and emotional state. And so and then you account again just for society and for relative resources and all of these different types of things. Like you know, attachment is like the number one reason why pregnancies should be planned. Because then you can account for all those things that are within your power to control. You can account for them if you plan. If you don't plan and you learn it on the fly, one of the things you risk is attachment.
Wow. Wow. Doc, just a brief pause here. Gerald has to, Attorney Christmas has to get to an event. Gerald, before you sign off, could you talk about the event you're going to? And you go ahead and get ready for that event and bless us.
I'm headed to the women's tea at Central Baptist Church. This is being hosted by the women's ministry. When my mother was an active member of the church, they had a men's ministry, but they did not have a women's ministry. And so she founded the women's ministry at Central Baptist and started that, and was at the helm of that probably for a decade. And now they've always had an annual tea on the Saturday before Mother's Day. And they do this now since my mother passed as a fundraiser for a scholarship that is in her name. And so I'm headed down to the church now for that, because today is the tea. And this is the first time they're bringing the tea back since COVID. There was a lot of hesitance, during COVID and then immediately after, about bringing large groups together, especially at the church, because we have a lot of elderly at the church also. So this is the first time that the tea is coming back since COVID, and we're excited about it. And so I'm trying to get down here to help them celebrate the women's ministry, Mother's Day, and also support the Martha J. Christmas Scholarship.
So how does that work?
Awesome.
I mean, so they have the tea. Do they, do you just show up and you pay, or how does that work?
Oh, they have tickets. They sell tickets. They sell tickets ahead of time for the tea.
Okay. And how much are the tickets?
$50.
$50 per ticket. And do you
Yes.
give, in addition to that, do they sell tickets at the door, and what are the times and so forth?
I'm not sure if they are selling tickets at the door. I need to find out. They probably are. You know how the church is.
Yeah.
You can always show up. They're not going to turn you away.
And
It's at 11.
What time? It's at 11? All
The
right.
tea is at 11. Mm-hmm.
And is it formal or what's the dress code?
It's the church. It's not formal, but those women gonna be dressed up.
Gonna have their hats on.
It's gonna be like Derby Day all over again, huh? All right. Well, Gerald, thank you for joining us this morning, man.
Thank you, Attorney Christmas.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we got to catch up again next Saturday.
Also literally, you are modeling the essence of the establishment of the holiday. Awesome, brother.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, you know, that's Gerald Christmas, baby.
And you know,
before
which
you go,
all the women, tell all the women in your life I said Happy Mother's Day.
yeah, you
You
all
do
do,
the
you do
same,
the
bro.
same. But
To
before
all the
you
mothers
go,
at the church, that the
before
level
you,
set said happy Mother's Day.
yeah,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
and since you're on, before you go, we will acknowledge together that we lost someone that we love that's near and dear to our hearts. We've known, you know, grew up with Arthur Jimerson. Uh,
Yes, yes. I'm glad you did that. I didn't forget it, but I'm glad you brought that up.
Professional boxer, grew up with Gerald and was the nicest spirit you ever want. I've never seen
Mhm.
anybody be challenged to a fight, beat the guy, and then help the guy home. Uh,
Yes. And that was Arthur.
that was Arthur. Come on, man, you know.
And the other thing, when you talk about that, Larry, you know, Arthur was an extremely God-fearing man. If you know, that's the only comfort that I see in his passing is that if nobody's in heaven, Arthur's in heaven.
No
And
question.
know he's watching over us in a peaceful state, in a happy state right now.
Yes, he is. But
Mhm.
he'll be missed. And if we had time, you know, I think they give boxers, what is that, the 9 count when they
Mhm.
pass? We certainly would need to do that. But Gerald, we don't want to hold you, man. And you go ahead and you know you've done us proud as
All
always.
right, thank you. We're gonna catch up next week.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
God
sir.
willing. All right.
Okay. Take care.
Okay, man. You too.
So yeah, but that attachment is everything. And you know, so you know, mom is usually the primary attachment. Um, and then, you know, and then dad. And but that's what kids need. They need, you know, ultimately they need one person that they absolutely know, you know, is no matter what, got me. And you know, if you don't have that initial attachment, it is really difficult going forward, because that shapes the way that you build relationships going forward. You know, that your ability to trust really kind of rests with that ability to attach and to form and maintain secure relationships. And so if you don't trust your mom, who can you trust? Right? It's literally it's pretty challenging after that. And so um you know, and so and that's why, you know, it's you just cannot take lightly attachment is, as I said, like you you have to be thoughtful about bringing little people into this world, because you got to be able to control all the variables that are literally within your control.
So when you hear, you know, when I hear the statement going forward, you know, if they had a bad relationship with their mama, you can't trust them, you can't do this, and you can't do that. You know, quite oftentimes, you know, we've got an attachment problem there.
Correct. And I mean, and again, it's like, so this might not be, you know, particularly with our larger conversation, this might not be popular with folks, but I am a firm believer that there is a degree to which um, there's a degree to which, let me change this. Let me switch. So to the degree that we have secure attachments, it has it that to the degree that we have insecure, excuse me, to the degree that we have insecure attachments, that that has been like a feeding ground, literally a breeding ground for this disrespect that we think that Black men have for Black women. And also for, because what we leave out of that conversation when we talk about, you know, black men treating black women however, you know, they say we treat them, what we leave out of that conversation is the hundreds and thousands of young ladies that you know who tell you they can't stand black women. They tell you that I don't even deal with sisters. I don't even deal with sisters. I don't even have no girlfriends. You know sisters like this. You know sisters who feel like they can't talk to each other, right? And so my thought is that there is some percentage of that is predicated in attachment issues. And so, and why we struggle with the conversations, because a lot of times we just think that.
Let's go back over that. I've never processed that. So what you're saying is that it's not just a phenomenon that men have, it's a phenomenon that women have developed as a result of the relationships with their mothers.
With their attachment, yes, and their attachment piece, correct.
Wow. I have never looked at it like that.
And so, like it's hard for me to imagine. Like how do you just talk crazy to black women all the time and love black women? You can't do both. You can't just, everything you say is right, and then be like queen. You can't do that.
Right.
So how does that occur? Some portion of that has to literally date back to the attachment for you to have that kind of vitriol toward black women, right? For black women to, you know, have complicated relationships with black women, it has to come from attachment, you know. So like to say, I mean, and so the thing is, we don't really have a problem with saying that about black boys. When black boys have difficulties with black men, we automatically say he got daddy issues, and he had problems with his daddy, so he can't deal with black. We say about black boys all the time. It's both. It ain't just black boys. It's black girls, and it ain't just the daddy. It's the mama too. If you are a parent, part of your responsibility as a parent is to have a firm and healthy attachment to your child. That's your responsibility. That's your fundamental responsibility. Attachment, and then feed, clothe, and shelter. So protect, attach, protect. That's your job. Right? And so, but we're very skewed in our perspectives of this. We do have this phenomenon, moms can do no wrong. That's not true. All moms aren't created equal. All dads aren't created equal. It's so, but those things that we can control, we have to control. If we don't control, to the degree that we don't control what we can control, like pregnancy, we start off putting attachment at risk. When you don't have planned pregnancies, then you probably don't have good prenatal care. It's all downhill from that point. And so, and I'm not, my point ain't even that people are innate, I ain't saying that these parents are bad people. I'm saying these are things that folks aren't necessarily contemplating. And why they're not contemplating? Because it's an unplanned parent. It's an unplanned pregnancy. You know what I mean? And so this is why it should be planned. And this is what it means to have planned parenting. And so even that, we ain't got all caught up in this social political stuff. And so now you hear planned parenting, you think birth control, but not birth control so that you can have babies when you're able to take care of the babies. We think when we hear birth control, we're caught up, on the, genocidal conversation. And so it distorts, our willingness and ability to utilize things that could be helpful to us otherwise. So we need the facts in order to, to be informed, make better decisions. Now, again, if you don't want to use birth control, don't use birth control. But make sure that you can attach, feed, clothe, and house that life that's coming. Otherwise, it can be pretty bad for everybody involved.
We need to be very intentional anyway, as it relates to the morbidity account, morbidity, morbidity.
Yes, all of
Right.
these things are part of that. Yes, all of these things are a part of that, right? And
Yeah.
so we have high, and it's across the board. It's across socioeconomic status. Black women, have an exceedingly high death rate around pregnancy. Before, during, after, right? And high risk. And we have high infant mortality rates, right? So all of these things are important, and so all of these things they require this thing is just much more. This thing requires much more intentional behavior than what some people are given, and so um, you know that's kind of the piece. But yeah, attachment. Back to your question, attachment literally means everything.
Wow. Well, thank you, Doc. Let's I see you're in the office, which means there is work to be done, as I do on this Saturday as well. So one final issue, um, uh, leave the people that are engaged in the true meaning of Mother's Day. And I'm not saying that there's just one true meaning, but the true founding of it, as we have discussed and as you have iterated earlier today, is in memoriam. So, do we have any suggestions for those that are like you and I, whose Titan is no longer here in physical form as we celebrate this day? Because you're right. There's generally, my mother's birthday is May the 3rd. Then we have Mother's Day. Then I have, a deceased sibling's birthday on Malcolm's birthday, the 19th. Then I have a deceased sibling's birthday on the 30th of May. Then my birthday, then a deceased sibling on the 6th. As we go along on this, what suggestions do you have in celebrating mom that's no longer here, as well as mom that's here? Because we don't want to forget about those either.
One of the things, again, for those of us who uh, are physically without, is grieving takes as long as grieving takes, right? And so, give yourself a break. you know, don't feel like you're grieve. Don't feel like you didn't grieve long enough. Don't feel like you grieve too long. It's okay as long as you still get up and go to work, and you manage your self-care, and you take care of all of the responsibilities that you're responsible for in your day-to-day. It is fine. You're probably never gonna you ain't gonna never not miss your mom, right? And so I think some people kind of confuse that. They think because they continue to miss her that you know the grief thing ain't working for them. No, you're gonna always miss her. And so, but Gerald says he has a lock of hair. You can't really see because of the glare of the light, but under the pictures, over my right shoulder is my parents. So my mom is right there. Over my left shoulder is a picture of my dad. Over here to my left, my mom and dad. You know, my office is like literally. I mean, I just got stuff in my office that reminds me of my parents. And so, so you have to find those things, you know, um, that remind you of your mom, the best of your mom. Find those things, and you know, kind of use those things. They can be helpful to you, or do those things that your mom did that you enjoyed, or that you all did together, or again, you create a new kind of ritual, a new kind of celebration that maybe you do, at Mother's Day, on her birthday, on whatever other special days that you all have, because you can still have her with you. But in so doing, you also have to be kind to yourself.
Doc, sometimes you come to a conclusion and that's it. That's it. That's over. So, man, I want to thank you for your time, man, particularly seeing that you're in the office this morning. I understand the sacrifice, and I'm sure you've blessed some folks today, man. I appreciate it.
Part of the reason I'm in the office because my wife, who's a mother, kicked me out the bar today. Said, I don't want you doing the show in the bar. Go to the office. So
Well,
otherwise, I would be in my other office, which is the bar. But so
You know,
that's part of the reason why I'm in the office today.
I stay out of grown folks' business. So so I'm gonna let y'all handle that one. I got my own issues. I've got to go to I've got a stack of books in the mud room over here that I haven't even unpacked yet. So I'm going to spend the balance of the day putting bookshelves together before, I have a domestic situation on my own.
But brother, just like even like to that point, and I'm like, I know that you're a bibliophile, just like I'm a bibliophile. Books, and it's books. Whether we're talking about mom, dad, whoever, we might not even be talking about a loss of anybody. You got to create for yourself a space that's peaceful and calm and serene. And for me, it's one of my spaces is my office. And again, what I got in my office, books. Some of these books, most of the books are my books. Some of the books are my books now because they were my mom's or my dad's. And it's another way to have them near me and another way to share time and space with them. I got probably every photo that my parents, had. It's all that stuff is in my office. So this is one of those spaces where I can come and literally commune. And so this is back to your question. This is part of the way that you do it. You create spaces for you to have peace of mind.
I did not have the pleasure of meeting your mom, but I did meet your father. Not just met with him, but I studied with your father. We took several Bible study, which really were graduate level at the level that Dr. Wendell Bonner teaches classes. And one of your father's, I would have to say, one of your father's favorite scriptures. It's ironic that your father would say this, was that my people perish for a lack of knowledge. I don't know if he ever said that around the house, but that was one of his favorite, I shouldn't say favorite, but I can remember him saying that on more than 4 or 5 occasions. So it's hilarious to see things come back full circle. Now I didn't at the time, I was in class with him for probably a year and a half before I realized that he was your father. But Mr. Alexander, it shows the impact of parenting. It shows it. So, and God doesn't make any mistakes either. So the fact that I bear witness to that was, that was intentional. And I think God has the most severe sense of humor of anyone. Anyway, so yeah, man, it's a blessing, and I thank your father for his sacrifice, because just think of all the things that had to go right for you to even have the curiosity that you have.
Well, that's
I mean, before, so you can't have that curiosity if Maslow's hierarchy of needs are not met.
correct.
Because you're preoccupied with getting a basic need met.
You're trying to survive.
You're trying to survive.
You're trying to survive. And so you don't get that attachment. And so again, like one of the So like, I know we're trying to go, but one of the things, like I just refute so many stereotypes, you know, and I know I can't totally rely on my reason for refuting it. I know that I have to look at things in a more general basis, but because I know what I know that the stereotype ain't absolute, right? So I know that, and that's really what you got to know about stereotypes. And so what I mean is, you know, when folks talk about, you know, what dads do and don't do, when my mom worked. And so when it was time to go back to work after she had me, you know, initially my grandmother, my great grandmother was childcare. But, you know, she passed when I was probably 3. And my dad worked nights. So guess what? Now he my childcare. And so my dad was childcare from 4 until I went to first grade, because I did half day kindergarten. And so um and that I remember that. I remember days with my dad, right? And and so I yes, my curiosity is like super duper because my parents provided, my parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, and you know, my village was there, and it provided that 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 space. You know, people left and they came back. You know what I mean? And so I had that object constancy, right? So I wasn't fearful, you know, of that, and so I could concentrate, and they'll be back. You know, I knew my mom was coming back at the end of the day, and you know, and I knew that my dad was gonna go to sleep, and then like I probably didn't always know he was gonna go to work, but I knew when it was time for him to take his nap before going. I don't know that I understood, you know, I can't remember understanding that when I wake up in the morning, he gonna be gone, you know. But by the time I got home from, you know, from kindergarten around 12, he had already been home, took a nap, and now is ready to receive me in his own, you know. And so all of that stuff matters.
I had the exact same thing. My mother didn't work though. She, you know, she did go to nursing school and she, you know, became a nurse. But that permanency, you know, one of my father's tenets, since he didn't know his father, is that there would never be a time in the day where I did not know where he was. And
Mm-hmm.
and I can tell you that that was the truth to the
Yes.
day. You know, I mean, I may not have, and we didn't have cell phones until the latter aspects, because he died in 2005. But I mean, you know, I remember him having me waiting at the house because he took his grandkids somewhere, and I was being, comedic. And I was like, man, look, it's 12 o'clock, man. You just don't, you know, you just getting home with these babies. You know, he was like, well, you ain't have to worry about it because I got the family with me. So you just wait. But that was the tenet, man. I mean, and those are stalwarts. Those are things that we take for granted. Those are foundational things that, you know, just like taking a step inside of your home. You expect for the ground to be there because it's supposed to be there.
It's
But
supposed to be that.
yeah, but you know, there's a whole lot of work that had to go there for that foundation to sit right. And you know, so Doc, once again, thank you, man. Awesome
Thank
show.
you, sir.
And we look forward to, you know, more of your knowledge. God get, you know, God with God's grace.
Tell sister I said Happy Mother's Day.
You do the same, Doc. And you know,
Yes, sir.
and we glad things are working out. With that boss situation. We're gonna leave it there.